We're back. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Lo. Happy Monday, everybody. Super excited to be here with you today, especially after a little week off, a little hiatus last week. Hopefully you guys took some time to catch up on some of my previous Learn with Lo episodes because there's becoming quite a bank of them and I'm super proud and pumped for them. So if you're new here, welcome. Our Learn with Lo episodes are our Monday opportunity to take a little bit more of a deep dive into some long form content around a lot of different questions that I get even in my one-on-one clinical space or questions that I get asked multiple times through DMs and things I see in trends and really just relevant health topics. And today is no different. I really want to dive in today around a common theme that I've seen, an unfortunate common theme that I've seen, specifically with my female patient population and looking at the common misdiagnoses that I tend to see in women's hormone care and women's health care in general. So I think if you are a female out there, or even males, I love my guys. So don't think I'm, like I said, just focusing on females here. These can honestly apply to males as well too. But I think specifically in more of the female health and wellness space, I'm sure a lot of you have been to some sort of practitioner or healthcare provider before and been told the notorious sentence of, oh, your labs are totally normal. Everything looks great. See you again next year. Or you kind of just feel like you get sent out the door with a medication, but no really other specific direction for why you feel the way that you do. Or even worse, maybe you go to a more functional minded practitioner, more of a naturopathic doctor, and they literally have no idea how to even read or interpret or give you more information amongst, more labs than just handing you more supplements, right? To me, that's always like a big red flag. Like if you ever walk into a practitioner's office or even just their lobby and the first thing you see is like a wall of supplements, I'd be like, skirt, and I'd like walk the other way out the door. And I'm sure not all of them, like I said, are like that, but just between medications and supplements, they tend to be kind of the go-to nowadays for really kind of just a pill for every ill model. And there's really no, like I said, empowerment behind that. There's no education behind that. We're not getting to any sort of root cause scenario behind that, because my philosophy around healthcare for men and women is really this process of revealing, right? And what I mean by that is I was talking to actually one of my gentlemen this morning about removing a lot of the barriers that were preventing his body from accessing its own self-healing capacity, right? I truly believe that our body is not dumb. It has a lot of opportunities where it can heal itself if it's given the right resources. But if there's a lot of different barriers in its way, then it loses the ability to do that. We end up with dysfunction. We end up with symptoms. We end up with disease, right? And so a lot of those different barriers could be things like blood sugar imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, toxin burden, dysbiosis, right? Lots of, and we'll kind of get into more of those today, but we aren't really getting at the root of things when we're just coming at it from more of a pill for every ill kind of model. And so I just want to give you guys a few different examples of this. These are real life examples of things that I've literally heard in my office space, even just this last month, of people's experience really trying to find this root cause kind of mentality and root cause understanding of our overall healthcare. So I had one gal tell me, she said, a naturopath just told me to eat more broccoli and didn't have any lab testing available, and it was a $300 appointment. Wow, that's crazy. Another gal told me, she goes, I was tested positive for SIBO. Now this was through a gastroenterologist. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is what that stands for, by the way. I was tested positive for SIBO and spent a year doing a low FODMAP diet and multiple rounds of antibiotics only to have all the symptoms come back, as well as with a terrible breakout of acne, right? It's like, okay, we didn't really get to the root cause then if we're just slapping someone with a low FODMAP diet and multiple rounds of antibiotics, right? Or someone, here's another gal, she was like, I was next level exhausted for years and years, and I finally took the leap of faith and saw a naturopathic provider, and they finally diagnosed me with Hashimoto's, which felt great and very validating, but then proceeded to give me levothyroxine and 15 other supplements and set me on my way. I had to do my own research to figure out that autoimmune disease is actually a gut problem, and her treatment was just a Band-Aid. And I'm like, yes, I know. And that's what I'm just, like I said, so passionate about helping people realize that it's not a knock on any particular, like I said, practitioner or any sector of healthcare. It's more just the tools in the toolbox that they might have available to them, or the education in their toolbox that they might have available to them. The intentions are great and the intentions are there, but there's just, like I said, a different mindset when you're seeking out more root cause kind of care. And some people aren't really trained to understand the differences to be able to really get to the root. So the truth of the matter is, there is no multivitamin or mineral drop that is going to fix your mineral deficiencies or your imbalances. There is no thyroid medication or supplement or at-home testing that's going to fix your thyroid. There's no gut-supporting juice cleanse, elimination diet, or fiber gummy that's going to fix your gut, right? It's like the body is this beautifully whole system, and we're not just parts and pieces that are just casually connected together, right? When you tinker with one part of the body, the whole body is going to feel this, right? So at the end of the day, the nuance of the human body and that human experience, it can feel kind of complicated. But if you understand how to zoom out and look at the body as a whole, it's really not, right? And being able to piece that back together and help people really take their hormones back into their own hands is something that I thoroughly enjoy and feel very, very passionate about. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to feel like a slave to these supplements and treatment plans and like, oh, I guess I'm just on this medication for the rest of my life and that's that, right? It's like you can ask questions, right? You can ask like, what's at the root of this? What's the exit strategy, right? Those are types of things that it doesn't just have to be a DIY approach that you're working your way through, but it does really require kind of like a deeper, higher level understanding of the body. Lots of different education, and in most cases might involve, like I said, some more specialty lab testing, or somebody that knows how to look at all of those things instead of like spacing the body out into 42 different parts and pieces, each one of them with their own different specialty. It's like, that's really getting us nowhere. And it's kind of just leading to more of this understanding of whack-a-mole kind of medicine, right? So I have seen hundreds of women. I've had the blessing of seeing hundreds of women, and like I said, males too, but today we're going to really kind of talk about the female population of individuals and some of the struggles that they're going through to really find answers to a lot of the common symptoms that they're experiencing. So I've seen hundreds of different women's, I've seen hundreds of different lab tests, and even more data too around individuals' wearable technology, right? That's data for us to look at too, and really taking in like, what's your lived experience? What are your symptoms? What's your health history? What are your current labs saying? What's your wearable data saying? All of this to me, I'm like, yes, that's gold, right? Your lived experience, your subjective day-to-day feelings, as well as objective data that we're taking in. All of that comes into play, and like, let's start to put the pieces of the puzzle back together again and create this holistic approach to healing. And again, be able to identify and remove any of those barriers that are preventing our body from accessing its own self-healing systems, right? Those self-healing systems are there. They're inside of all of us. Sometimes we just get in their way. Sometimes there are multiple metabolic factors that are in the way. And those are the root causes that I feel like, especially women, are not being talked about. And to me, that's a problem because it is very real. Their symptoms are very real. Our lived experience in our bodies every day is very real. And we don't need to just be placated and pushed off with like some palliative care. And it's like, oh, here's the birth control. Here's the medication. Here's some hormones. Just like, meh, feel better, right? It's like, no, it's like, what is going on? How does all of this fit together? And so the real root causes of a lot of these symptoms is really what we should be addressing. And that's where I feel, like I said, I think we can do better, right? So when we think about all of the different common signs, symptoms, conditions, diagnoses, conditions that women tend to seek out health providers for, a lot of times they can be boiled down into really three main areas, right? So that's really, really want to talk about today is kind of what are those three main areas that to me are going misdiagnosed for a lot of women. Either they're not being caught on labs, even though they're like the evidence for them is blatantly there, or they're not really easily seen on conventional or routine lab testing. And that's why they're getting missed, right? So we're just going to dive right in, and we'll start with probably the most common culprit that I tend to see when it comes to women's hormones, and something that is commonly misdiagnosed in women. Number one is liver dysfunction. You guys have probably heard me talk about the liver time and time again, and I'm going to continue to keep talking about the liver. Why? Because of the liver, along with our kidneys and our skin and all of our lungs as well too, the liver is one of our body's main detoxification organs, specifically because the liver has capacity to keep things out of circulation that our body doesn't want mucking up the system, right? Which is great. We always need those storage sites and like those places in our body where we're able to kind of like tuck things away that shouldn't be just like swimming around in the bloodstream. But the bad thing is when that system gets overloaded and the liver can't offshoot all of these different toxins that it's holding, we've got a problem. Right? Because then the liver can't do some of its most basic and fundamental detoxification jobs, which revolve around balancing hormones, balancing cholesterol, managing thyroid conversion, right? Yes, the liver does all of those things. And if it doesn't have the bandwidth to be able to do all those things because it's overloaded with all of these toxins that are coming in, it really can't do its job, right? And I know that this word kind of toxins gets a bad reputation because we think like kind of like super woo-woo, super functional medicine-y, but when I think of toxins, it's really anything that's in the body that the body doesn't want in the body, right? It doesn't belong. So that could be even like certain like supplements, certain medications, certain toxic compounds, certain hormones, right? It's like the body wants a little bit of these hormones, but it doesn't want a lot of these hormones. So even cortisol, right? It's like cortisol being a hormone, estrogen being a hormone, testosterone being a hormone. So all of these things that come into the body, yes, you get your typical toxins if you want to talk about pesticides and heavy metals and mycotoxins and mold. It's like, yes, of course, we have those as well too. But with the liver being that number one detoxification organ, its responsibility is to take things from a fat soluble state and safely excrete them into a water soluble state where we can pee, poop, or sweat them out. If the body does not feel well resourced enough to get something from fat soluble all the way to the toilet, it will keep it in fat soluble state, right? So do not think that there is not an association with body composition and overall toxin burden, because there's a very significant one that we are definitely overlooking in conventional medicine, and we're just pushing everybody towards this like, I guess you just need to eat less, move more. I guess you just need to like do more cardio. It's like, no, we need to be thinking about what's being accumulated, what's being backed up. So if there is liver dysfunction, what are some of the common symptoms that kind of clue me off to this? Let's just talk subjective experience, somebody's symptoms. Number one, hormonal imbalances, specifically around estrogen. So this might include estrogen dominant symptoms like breast tenderness, heavy cycles, long cycles like bleeding for like 7+ days, a lot of PMS symptoms, even things like endometriosis, fibroids, fibrocystic breasts, right? All of those symptoms, I'm like, what's going on in the liver for sure. Digestive symptoms. Sometimes this can appear as bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, food sensitivities. Absolutely. Sometimes this can show up as skin problems, rosacea, eczema, acne, yellowing of the skin, right? We think of that like jaundice kind of appearance for some people or even some babies, right? Weight fluctuations for sure, unexplained weight gain, or even unexplained like weight loss as well too. Allergies and just sensitivities in general, whether chemical sensitivities, sensitivity to smells, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to allergens, and environmental exposures in that regard too, right? So when you think of some of those, like some people know, they're like, oh yeah, like I'm super sensitive to supplements, I'm super sensitive, I have allergies to everything under the sun. I have all these estrogen dominant symptoms, my cycles are a mess, and that's why I got on birth control. It's like, okay, well then the liver dysfunction is still happening behind the scenes, even if you're on birth control, right? It didn't fix the problem, it just like masked the problem, and it's probably showing up elsewhere as well too. Some of the lab markers that can indicate this, we're going to be looking at liver enzymes, whether that's AST, ALT, GGT, alkaline phosphatase. We ideally want to see like AST, ALT, AST. We want to see those below 25 for sure. We can look at low or high bilirubin content can set us off for like, maybe there's some liver issues. Someone having high cholesterol, someone having poor methylation status, or what we call like high homocysteine markers. Also, we can think about other tests outside of blood work that we can look at, like gut testing. If someone struggles with high beta glucuronidase, someone struggles with high steatocrit, we know that there's some liver issues definitely going on here. Or if we do like some Dutch testing on someone, definitely seeing some dysfunction in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of liver detoxification for sure too. So between routine testing, blood work, or more functional testing with like stool testing or hormone testing, we can absolutely identify pretty clearly whether there's some liver detoxification issues going on. And what tends to happen is individuals with these same symptoms, they get Band-Aid solutions. They get long-term, lifelong allergy care, right? They have to go in for allergy shots, or they're always on allergy medication. Or somebody that's, like I said, subject to like extreme dieting interventions because they can never lose weight. Someone that's subject to birth control or ablation or hysterectomy to control their menstrual cycle issues. I'm like, or we could talk about the root cause here, which is the liver, right? So that's usually one of like first stop that I tend to see when it comes to women being kind of like misdiagnosed is, did someone ever talk to you about your liver health, liver dysfunction, liver detoxification? No? Okay, probably not, because there's not a medication for that. So that's why probably no one's talked to you about it. But working on someone's liver detoxification and supporting that can be a life-changing experience, right, for women. So that's my first caveat of like misdiagnosis number 1, what's going on in the liver. Common misdiagnosis number 2 is going to be blood sugar imbalances. You guys probably aren't surprised by that, but one of the biggest things that I probably will even go a little deeper on is talking about blood sugar lows specifically. I think in the standard medical system, we're very well versed in establishing blood sugar highs or looking for patterns of insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, which is great. I think that there's, like I said, definitely some education and conversation to be had about high blood sugars. But if I had to say notoriously, what's the more common theme around women that come to me and have blood sugar issues, it's usually blood sugar lows. And they don't even know that they're having blood sugar lows. Or they don't know they're having blood sugar like dips and crashes, or even why their diet is not conducive to balancing blood sugar. Even if they're eating low carb or they're doing intermittent fasting, I'm like, those are some of the people that I see have the worst blood sugar profiles ever, right? Especially for my females, because those nutrition strategies were not designed for the female metabolism, right? So what are some symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation? Fatigue. For sure too, like chronic tiredness even after a full night's sleep, cravings, like intense cravings for either sugar or salt-based foods, mood swings, increased irritability, increased anxiety, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, decreased cognitive function, even like word recognition, right, can be signs of blood sugar issues. Not being able to sleep well, either not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep, increased thirst and increased urination. So even if you're drinking a bunch of water, you feel like you have to pee constantly and pee all the time. Or sometimes I also see like numbness and tingling in extremities, specifically like fingers, toes, arms, and legs. Those can also be signs of blood sugar imbalances, right? So like I said from the jump, sometimes it can be blood sugar highs, yes. But I will say on conventional labs, it's difficult to see somebody that's struggling with blood sugar lows, which is why it commonly goes misdiagnosed, right? Lots of different conditions are associated with blood sugar imbalances. So insulin resistance and diabetes, obviously, hypoglycemia, which we'll talk about a little bit more, PCOS, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, adrenal fatigue or adrenal dysfunction, mineral deficiencies, like all of those things. It's not about the minerals and it's not about the adrenals. It's about your blood sugar, right? That is what is depleting these symptoms or these systems, excuse me. So some certain lab markers, we can definitely look at fasting blood sugar. I ideally want to see that between 70 and 90. We can definitely look at insulin levels. I want to see that below 7. But again, individuals that struggle with low blood sugar, a lot of their labs might look completely normal, right? Maybe their hemoglobin A1C might be a little bit low. Ideally, I like to see it between like 5 and 5.4. So sometimes that can clue me off to like some blood sugar lows or blood sugar crashes. But traditionally, this has to be more just the art of understanding as a practitioner what to ask about, right? So a lot of times I'm very much prompting and asking about, how do you feel during the day? How do you feel after you eat? When are you eating, right? So a lot of times it can kind of come up more so in conversation and more of the interview process. And they're like, oh yeah, I always feel that way between meals. I thought that was just normal. It's like, nope, that's what we call hypoglycemia. And hypoglycemia turns into insulin resistance turns into type 2 diabetes. It's a progression. So a lot of times we don't even think or think to connect low blood sugars with potential health issues. Like that's stage 1 of blood sugar dysregulation that can eventually turn into more of a type 2 diabetes scenario. I also see a lot of blood sugar imbalances associated with high cortisol, right? So there's lots of talk about cortisol. We don't want high cortisol. So if you do like some sort of like Dutch testing or hormone testing, we can look and see high cortisol, high cortisone, depleted electrolytes, elevated kidney markers, low DHEA, low progesterone, low testosterone. Any of those pictures, like blood sugar. Hands down for sure, we have to make sure that we're checking that because otherwise we're over here like band-aiding your hormones. It's like, here's some progesterone, here's some testosterone. Meanwhile, your body is screaming and is like, that's cute, that's great, but like, that's not helping me at all, right? I actually needed blood sugar regulation techniques, like, thank you. Or we could throw all of the adrenal mocktails and all of the electrolyte powders at you in the world, and it ain't gonna do shit for your adrenals if your blood sugars are erratic. That's just how it is, right? So let's stop chasing the symptom and start chasing the solution, right? So misdiagnosis number 1 for women, liver dysfunction. Always goes missed, no one's talking about it. Same thing with blood sugar issues, but specifically blood sugar lows. You're seeing a theme because a lot of these misdiagnoses, they're going missed because there's not a medication to fix it. Right? That's why it's going missed. It's like, oh, well, guess I'll just see you next year when you are full-blown type 2 diabetic because I have a medication for that. But if you're before that and you're just experiencing hypoglycemia and all these hormone imbalances, come back when you're full-blown type 2 diabetic and your progesterone's in the tank because I can put you on a medication for that. It's like, what are we doing, right? It's like, there's just no logic to me when you start to understand the body holistically. And then I'll leave you guys with number 3. Common misdiagnosis that I see in women is gut dysbiosis, or more specifically, one could even go the next step further and say leaky gut, because some of this gut dysbiosis can cause intestinal permeability, right? So I'll try to keep this high level because obviously we don't have the space to necessarily do such a deep dive on this topic. And this is what I get into with my Renew Your Gut program. But we call this leaky gut or intestinal permeability is really just a fancy way of saying that the lining of the small intestine becomes permeable to things that it shouldn't be permeable. So this is like my favorite analogy, and I've had so many clients tell me that they love it when I do this. So you guys get a kick out of this. So your small intestine is about the thickness of a paper towel. So it kind of looks like this, and it has these little finger-like projections that sample into the gut what goes by. So when we eat food, it comes into the gut, and then we have these little villi in the small intestine that reach in and sample the food, right? If it samples something and it's like, ooh, that's some protein, that's some glucose, that's some fats, that's things we can use, it will sample it and it will open its tight junctions to let it through into the bloodstream. and then we'll close back up and sample again. Now, if it samples and it samples something like bacteria or viruses or something it doesn't want through, it shuts. It's right? And so that just passes right on by and we excrete it out of the body, right? What happens over time due to poor blood sugar regulation, high stress, environmental toxins, liver burden, dysbiosis, what can happen is that poor little small intestine, he starts to get damaged, right? And pretty soon those tight junctions just kind of fall apart. Those villi or those sampling things can actually shorten or atrophy and kind of die off. Now all of a sudden it's just like an open feeding system, right? Stuff is going from the gut to the bloodstream, and no one is keeping track of that. That is what we call leaky gut. Now we start to get all this stuff into the bloodstream that the body's like, what the heck? Why are you in here? And the immune system starts to tag, right? And the immune system's going crazy because it's like, hey, small intestine, you're not doing your job. Why is all of this stuff in here that should have been excreted? And the small intestine's like, I'm sorry, I'm weak. Like, I can't hold it together, right? That right there, friends, is the start of autoimmune disease. Right? So we have this statistic, we have 70 to 80% of autoimmune diagnoses are in women. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? Just based off of what I just said, right? You're like, oh, so liver dysfunction going misdiagnosed can eventually lead to leaky gut. And blood sugar dysregulation and high cortisol that goes misdiagnosed can lead to leaky gut. And leaky gut then leads to autoimmune disease. I'm like, ding, 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 right? We're not catching this stuff until it's like full-blown autoimmune disease. And I'm like, that stuff's been going on for decades, right? But we didn't catch it because we don't have the systems designed to think that way. It's just more so like, hey, come back when like you're completely debilitated and like we finally diagnose you with like lupus or Crohn's or Hashimoto's or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or Sjögren's or rheumatoid arthritis or Graves' disease, or I mean, keep naming them, right? There's so many autoimmune patterns out there now, and it's not the immune system, right? The immune system is actually doing its job, trying to clear out all the shit that the small intestine let through, right? And the small intestine let it through because there's systems upstream that are weakening it, right? So off my high horse here, we can start to think about what are some of those signs and symptoms of some of that dysbiosis and leaky gut. Digestive issues, obviously. Food sensitivities, like starting to react to gluten and dairy and eggs and soy and all of these types of things. Skin issues, autoimmune issues, joint pain, inflammation, nutritional deficiencies, right? Chronic low vitamin D, chronically low vitamin B status, frequent infections, like you feel like you get sick and you can't kick it. Increased inflammation body-wide, right? So it's like, this is an issue, right? And to me, a lot of times we're connecting these things like way too late, like IBS, autoimmune disease, celiac, Crohn's, food allergies, neurological conditions like autism, ADD, ADHD, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. All of these things have been related to gut health, right? Because of that intestinal permeability factor. And now the whole body system is like, high alert, right? So we have to be able to look for signs and symptoms of things like gut inflammation, right? Maybe if we do some more like better testing than just blood work all the time, we can do things like a GI map that I run on my individuals all the time, and we can identify, is there a picture here that's building? Do we have low beneficial bacteria? Do we have high opportunistic overgrowths? Do we have high calprotectin? Or if we run a Dutch panel, do we have some high indican markers? Are we seeing some thyroid issues? Do we have elevated thyroid antibodies? That's telltale for autoimmune and leaky gut conditions going on. Is there some toxin burden? Heavy metals, mycotoxins, all of those types of things. So if you're a fellow functional practitioner out there, some of those terms might feel familiar to you, of running things like GI map testing, running things like Dutch testing, running things like HTMA testing, things that we're going to be able to see outside of conventional blood work or routine blood work that will give us way better of a picture of really what's going on here, right? So when we kind of zoom out, I know I covered a lot today in a short amount of time, but I want you guys to really take away from this the three most common misdiagnoses that I see in women time and time and time again. And the longer that we continue to miss these 3 diagnoses, the worse it gets, right? Because we're just left year after year, doctor after doctor, practitioner after practitioner of a different Band-Aid solution, a different medication, another supplement, another elimination diet. And I'm like, what are we doing? Right? We're not really getting to the root of the issue here. We're not removing the things that are burdening the body's self-healing capacity, right? It's in there. We just need to teach the person to take empowerment of their health and learn how to also access that as well too. So it's much, much easier to navigate these things the earlier that we catch them. So by the time, like I said, it gets to a full-blown disease state, it's like we're deep in the Western medical culture now because like it's built so deep, right? So if this is something that you're interested in, if you feel like you've been part of this like rigmarole of like this vicious cycle of going through practitioner diagnosis or lack of, and you're like, what's going on at the root? I would definitely encourage you to dig into these 3, liver dysfunction, blood sugar dysregulation, as well as gut dysbiosis. Those are the 3 that I would really, really start to hone in on. If you're curious about having somebody help you through that process, what does this look like? Guide me through this journey for myself and my unique picture. You would be a perfect candidate to get started with my functional wellness consult. That is the door, that's the gateway into our one-on-one work together. You can find a link for that in the profile of my Instagram. I'll also drop a link below here so that you can schedule that functional wellness consult. We can get some labs ordered. We can get a consult on the book so that way we can start to really dive in and piece your history together. So remember the 3 main diagnoses: liver dysfunction, blood sugar dysregulation, and gut dysbiosis. And my females out there, you'll know what I'm talking about when we start to get to the root of things. Things are easy. Right? Dare I say, it becomes a positive domino effect for all of our goals versus trying to piecemeal a strategy together and feeling awful and spinning our wheels. So I'm here for you. Let me know if you have any questions, but like I said, I'll drop the link to my functional wellness consult and I'll look forward to seeing you guys next